you paid Abdullah. You made a deal with him and you gave him money.
I
Do you
did.
think that he had any idea of what might await you?
I had no idea. I was blinded to ambition. I was so deep in that culture that I depended upon and relied upon the men around me. I was I got a phone call from a former Mujahideen leader in the 1980s, today a member of parliament, the man who had set this up, advising me the last minute to not cross the border. He was trying to save my life. Everybody on the border, however, was telling me different things from what he was telling me. I chose, in the end, not to believe him, but to go with Abdullah because I thought that he would keep his word, as everyone thus far had kept their word.
My guess is Jere Van Dyk. His book, Captive, My Time as a Prisoner of the Taliban, published by Times Books. This is WNYC, WNYC.org. I'm Leonard Lopate. So describe what happened on the day that you and your traveling companions were kidnapped.
It's February 16th. We left late morning, which I thought was strange because generally in Afghanistan you leave at the crack of dawn always to get to a place before your destination before nightfall because there's no electricity in most places and because of the danger. I was passed from one group to the next, and then finally there was my translator, my two bodyguards carrying rifles, bandoliers. We were hiking in the mountains for about 6 hours, hiking north in Momand Agency. We came across into a small valley. It was sundown. My two bodyguards were in the lead. I was behind. My interpreter was behind me. I looked up. I saw a tinge of black move behind a rock. I knew immediately, instinctively, that it was a black turban. I froze. The black turban turned into a man jumping over a rock with a rocket-propelled grenade launcher, shouting, "Kenna, Kenna, Kenna, get down, get down." And a swarm of men, about a dozen, came running down the mountain, spread out with rifles and their RPG-7s. And I knew I was dead.
What reason did they give for kidnapping you?
They didn't say anything.
You said you knew you were dead. You really thought you were going to die.
I assumed right then because I was being attacked by the Taliban. I was in the tribal areas. No one had done this. I had no idea what to expect or what not to expect. I just assumed, not that they were going to kidnap me. I didn't know anything. I just assumed they were going to kill me right then. I assumed that they had stumbled across me, saw us coming. It didn't dawn on me initially that maybe they knew I was coming, that maybe they were waiting for me there.
Well, did they give you a reason for capturing you other than that you were a foreigner?
Initially,
Often they say you're a spy.
What they did was that they took me up, they blindfolded me, took me deep into the mountains, took me into a cell, 12 foot by 12 foot, a dark cell, and they sat next to me and asked me my name. I gave them my name, asked my father's name, and at that moment I knew I was deep into Pashtun culture. The most important question you can ask is, who was your grandfather? Deep tribal culture. Your lineage counts for everything. And then I couldn't keep the fiction alive anymore that I was a foreigner, that I was a Pashtun or a Nuristani, or the two main groups along the border there. And I said, I'm an American. I felt very free, very relaxed. But I also knew immediately that they thought I was a spy and I was dead.
Although you did tell them that who you wanted to speak to and about your past and all of that. How did Pashtunwali come into play here? Were you treated well? Weren't you and the others in your group kind of mistreated at times?
They never laid a hand on me. I was fed well. They provided heat for us in the form of a stove, a wood stove that they built. They gave me a sweater. I was able to have my reading glasses. Eventually they gave me my notebook. At the same time, that is called Namastiya, which is a part of Pashtunwali, which you must be a good host. Many, many times my main jailer would say, I will protect you. I will die before you. My head goes before your head. This is Pashtunwali. This is what's called Pana. I will protect to the death a guest in my home.
But you still feared that you were going to be killed.
At the same time, many occasions, it was the absolute opposite, and I was certain that I would be killed.
Your captors wanted you to convert to Islam. Did you ever seriously consider complying?
I had, in the 1980s, when I was there, watched these young men put their heads on the ground in the dirt, put their rifles in front of them, and bow down to their God. I grew up in a deeply Christian, today called fundamentalists. We were separatists, quietists, group of Plymouth Brethren in a small town in Washington State. I had an understanding of deep, deep faith. I admired them. I was intrigued by Islam, the strength that it gave them. I was curious about it. So I had spent a lot of time in the Muslim world, and yes, there was a part of me that was drawn to certain elements of it because I had left the faith of my youth. Yet, what I saw there was, and in the Quran it said, there shall be no compulsion in religion. It was so tyrannical, and that was being forced upon me. Plus, they said, we are Wahhabis. And the Wahhabis, that's an import from Saudi Arabia. That's Osama bin Laden. That's Al-Qaeda, Wahhabism. In their minds, the purest, also the most intense, the most warlike of all Islamic sects, if you will. And so I saw it nothing more than a way to try and stay alive.
So you told them that you would convert.
And
they gave you a name?
Yes, they gave me a name. Yes.
Well, that was part of the deal, wasn't it? So here you are. You're not at the same time. They're questioning you about your attitudes about the U.S. involvement in Afghanistan and other political issues. You have to tread a very, very narrow line here. You have to be very careful.
Extremely careful. I had to show deep humility out of absolute fear that I could be killed, either beheaded or shot at any moment. I had to completely, as a supplicant to them, yet I could not show cowardice. I could not cower. I could not be anything less than a strong man in their eyes. So I had to walk a very fine line between showing humility and being not afraid. I had to also, I knew how to look at them and how not to look at them. I knew certain things here. I had to draw them in, I felt, but I couldn't lie. I knew if I lied, I would pay for it in my own way.
Now, we often see Pakistan as walking a very fine line between the Taliban and their relationship with the United States. But we have told again and again, I've been told by people who've come back from Afghanistan, that the Pakistanis, the ISI especially, are behind much of what goes on here. Did you see any evidence of that?
I did not see any direct evidence of that. There have been countless articles that I've read in the newspapers and magazines and heard on television and radio over the years about the number of Pakistani soldiers along the border, about 90,000. If you travel along the Afghan border, you see a lot of American soldiers. I never saw in the times that I crossed into the tribal areas, not one single Pakistani soldier. I was told by the different Taliban groups that I was with of the amount of money they would get from their leaders, the people that they would go to in Pakistan. And who are these people, I would ask? They said they look like you. Sometimes they wear uniforms, but not. They had gray beards. They were older men. And all the Taliban leaders I met with crossed over and went to Pakistan for support. The lead jailer who had me said not one shot would be fired in Afghanistan without Pakistan's permission. It was made very clear to me that even though that place in some ways was a jungle, that the Pakistanis were directly involved, ultimately made the decisions, and that they had an allegiance, there was a hierarchy there that sometimes they did not quite understand themselves, but that the Pakistani army was involved.